Welcome back to a new episode. This is episode 5 of non-invasive pressure ventilation. And today we're just gonna refresh your memory if you watch the mechanical ventilation, or those who are new here, on how the machines, whether invasive or non-invasive ventilation, work. And also gonna depict the flow versus time diagram. So the machine, any machine needs to know when to initiate the support, right? The breath. The other name for this is trigger. So machines needs to have a trigger to tell her when to start, okay? And this we call the trigger. Now a trigger in mechanical invasive ventilation, those patients, as you know, they are sedated, but we have the patient and machine trigger. So all machines have this capability of the patient and machine trigger. This is we call it assist, and this we call it control. So if the machine, the ventilator, give the breath, we call it control breath, initiated from the machine. If the breath was initiated from the patient and assisted by the ventilator, augmented by the ventilator, then we call it assist breath. Now it's common sense to say non-invasive ventilation. That means we said patient doesn't need to be sedated, so they are awake and has to be awake enough to handle that. So it makes sense that all the breaths should be triggered and initiated by the patient, and all of them should be assist patient triggered. Now these machines, the non-invasive machine, they still can provide controlled breath if needed. And how do you know if they provide controlled breath? They will ask you of a backup rate, which means a respiratory rate that the machine will guarantee to the patients regardless. Which means if I say 10 per minute of this backup rate, okay, so the machine will say, okay, 60 over 10, that means every 6 seconds we should have a breath. So this is what the machine does. Okay, how often the patient sending a trigger to us? If the patient is on breathing more than 12 or more than 10, then we don't have to give any backup rate. In another simple terms, the machine will wait 6 seconds to hear any trigger from the patients. If 6 seconds pass without any trigger, the machine will itself go and deliver a breath. We call it controlled breath, and the cycle repeat itself. So that means as long as the patient breathing 10 or more, the machine doesn't have to give any controlled breath. But if the patient breathing less than this, the machine will guarantee 10 breaths at least. So that's a backup rate, and most non-invasive ventilation machines will give this. Now it doesn't make sense or counterintuitive. Okay, this patient has to be awake, why do we give a backup rate? Yes, this is kind of just a safety mechanism, but patients who require non-invasive ventilation should be awake enough to be initiate their breath. And if they are not initiating their breaths, to be honest with you, and if they are taking exactly what the machine giving them, you better just put them on invasive mechanical ventilations. For a reason, we'll talk about them later, why the patient need to be awake with this. So that's the trigger. Now it goes more than that. The trigger is how the ventilator sense that is there's two ways: pressure versus flow. But the non-invasive ventilation mainly using the pressure trigger, and I will explain that only here. As we say, the pressure versus time, we said it goes like this, for example, right? So how the machine knows when the patient try to, let's say this is now patient will take inspiration breath. When the patient try to initiate breath, will try to suck air in, so that will drop the intrathoracic pressure that will be sensed by the ventilator. You see a small dip here. When the ventilator senses there is a drop in the intrathoracic pressure, which is the proximal airway pressure, we talked about it, knows, okay, now the patient needs to take a breath, let me help him, and this will start the cycle. So that's how pressure trigger, patient pressure trigger. As long as it's working, there is no need for the backup rate, as we explained. I just want to make sure these videos remain short, so I'll explain the flow pattern in one of the next videos. Thank you. Thanks for watching this video. Please subscribe to our channel and activate the notification bell so you get to see the videos as soon as they are released. Glad to have you on board.